There are a lot of things to do in the Omicron galaxy. Wage war, shoot things, steal things, shoot things that steal things. Yeah, it's all around a terrible place to be. You don't live in Omicron. You survive by any means. The Lost Centurion by Mace975. I whipped my ship around and sent 4 capital cannon salvos tearing through the hull of a pirate frigate, its larger brothers returning the favor as a bombardment of ballistic rounds slammed into my ship's reactive armor. Bow shields deteriorated. Hull break chance negligible, my ship's internal AI said as the 2 pirate carriers planted several more railgun rounds into my reactive armor plating. It seems that shooting at an entire battalion of pirates and trying to take their Celestium deposits wasn't the best idea. I put my ship in reverse, making sure they didn't get any shots at my reactor, unloading more and more capital cannon rounds into the 2 pursuing carriers, but the shells were simply absorbed by their shields. They probably had several war shields hidden within their hulls. The carriers deployed their corvettes, and I realize now that they were armed with impact missile launchers. A half-dozen corvettes flanked me on either side, but I had to ignore them. My ship's automated defense system, or ADS for short, came online, and my point defense turrets roared as they intercepted the onslaught of missiles. The carriers' war shields were tough, but if I could break them, their thin armor would be food for my capital cannons. Thinking quickly, I activated the warp engine and set the targeted jump location to 53 meters behind the second carrier. Right before I warped, I activated the Hyperion chain gun nested in the belly of my ship. Bam! I don't like warping. The sensation of being dragged through a hole half my size was not pleasant, but I had other things to worry about. I was directly behind the second carrier now. "Bye-bye, pirate boy," I said, and then unloaded into its stern. The chain gun's rounds ripped through its shields like butter, completely mutilating its thrust vectors, rendering the ship immobile. After destroying the engines, the rounds were met by some light reactive armor protecting the grand reactor. Not a problem, though. Grinning, I brought the capital cannons to bear, and with 6 shots going clear through the light armor like it wasn't there, the stern of the ship was vaporized, setting the frontal half careening into its approaching support ships, destroying them. The remaining carrier and its supports turned to attack me, but I was faster, unloading the chain gun's remaining ammunition into the carrier's bow, completely crippling it. My ship shook as one of the corvette's missiles managed to evade my point defense turrets. Still negligible damage, though. "Alright, time to finish this," I yelled as I shot every capital cannon into the remainder of the carrier's bow. The entire thing exploded, my ship shaking violently as debris pinged off its armor. "Ha ha, that's why you don't mess with the capital cannon!" I cheered as I watched the ball of expanding plasma that was once my foe through the screens all around my small bridge that displayed different angles of my ship. My celebration was short-lived, however, as a warning popped up on my main display screen and a large red dot came up on the map in its corner. The ship's computer yelled, "Enemy Donager class Peacekeeper has warped in. Range 3.21 kilometers facing the bow section." I guess 2 massive reactor explosions in the middle of a semi-active war zone would attract some attention. But a Donager? That was a bit excessive. There was no fighting that monster of metal and guns. "Alright, I'm gone. Not picking that fight." I turned my ship around and pumped the engines to full throttle. The massive ship did the same, training its excessively large railguns at my stern. I was about to warp to a shipyard when it fired its railgun. I only had a second to react. I panicked and warped without setting my destination. The warp engine hummed and I felt a jolt as the railgun round slammed square into the warp engine. But it was too late. I had already warped. Pain shot through my whole body as my vision distorted and a strange noise I can't describe echoed throughout my whole ship. All the display screens were showing static, and it felt like I was being pushed into the command chair by 1,000 pounds of force. That's all I could remember before I passed out. Reactor back online. Internal atmosphere holding. Weapon systems down. Location unknown. I came to slowly, my whole head feeling like it was going to burst. I wasn't dead, but I didn't exactly feel alive. The display screens were still out. They only showed black. Hey computer, what's the display screen status?" I asked. Display screens fully operational. Strange. Must be a malfunction. The small map on the display screen showed an object behind me, so I grabbed hold of the directional thruster joystick and turned my ship around. What I was met with, I was not expecting. It was a ship that seemed to be frozen in time. Its stern looked like its reactor exploded, but the blue flames were frozen solid. It looked as if a giant creature was ripping its way out of it. After looking at it a little longer, I realized, with a start, what I was looking at. By God, it's the USS Centurion! But I thought she and her crew were lost to the pirates years ago. This ship was a legend. She took on entire fleets of pirates and renegade terrorists on her own, secured entire sectors until federal fleets could move in. I didn't see any of her escorting star bridges amongst the frozen wreck, but the fact that it was here at all was crazy. The story said that Chris Hailstorm, the most infamous pirate captain in history, took the Centurion head-on with his creation, the Mjolnir. The Centurion, despite its superior size, was overwhelmed and destroyed before a Federation fleet could be sent to end the conflict. So why are you here then, huh? I got up from my command chair. I was sore, but fine. I went down to the armory of my ship and donned my combat vac suit and grabbed a railgun rifle, plasma pistol, fragmentation grenades, and a few other essentials. The Centurion was mostly intact, so I decided to board it. The most unnerving thing was when I was out in space. There was no stars, no color, nothing. Just black. I had docked with the Centurion. The door took a bit of work to force open, but I was inside now. There was a stable atmosphere inside, but I wasn't going to risk taking my helmet off. Everything was pitch dark, so I turned on my suit's two small lights. A small display screen inside my suit mapped out the ship, and I followed the hallway to what should be the bridge of the ship. I had been walking for a while now when I stumbled across something. It was a lump on the ground, and when I got closer, I realized what it was. A pile of bones, in a Federation jumpsuit. What was most disturbing was some sort of strange glowing goo that was covering them. I don't think that person died of natural causes, I muttered, as I moved on. Reaching a fork in the hallway, I went right and found myself at a ladder with the words "Bridge Access" written on the wall next to it. I grabbed the rungs and pulled myself to the top. Inside the bridge was actually pretty cool, if it wasn't filled with bones and that blue goo stuff. My light seemed to make the goo pulse and, wait, no, that couldn't be right, move a little? I walked past the bones covered in the goo to the command chair that was at the center of the massive bridge. In it, I saw what I assumed to be the captain, or, well, what remained of him. I looked at the faded name on the suit, and it said, Alex. I looked around and noticed that the only place that the bones were piled were where people were standing, not sitting. It looked as if they all just died in the middle of doing their jobs. I wanted to know what happened. I made a trip back to my ship and grabbed a portable fusion core and wired it to the command console that the captain was using. My hope was to see their final moments. I wiped away the dust from the small monitor and went through the options until I found the tab labeled Black Box. I opened it and it showed a list of dates and lengths of recordings. They were all years old. I sat on the floor and picked the last one and clicked play. Combat detected. Black box recording initialized. They have us surrounded. I want quantum turrets focused on those support ships. Get our warp core online. We need to bail. I heard lots of booms and people yelling before Alex started again. They destroyed the frontal anti-ballistic armor. The supports are going for the engines. Warp now. I heard a strange noise and the recording ended. I sat back thinking. We both are here because we warped while our engines were being shot at. Maybe this was the place you travel through while warping, and we are stuck here now? Whatever it was, I had to get out of here. I was about to stand up when I heard a strange noise. It was banging, mixed with scraping. I brought up the railgun rifle and aimed it at the bridge access hatch. After a long moment, nothing happened. I slung it back over my shoulder and brought out the plasma pistol as I made my way back down the ladder. I turned to go back where I came from when something jumped on me. I heard a sizzling noise and my suit got very hot. I was thrown back as a glowing blue monster that seemed to be fused with a Federation jumpsuit started scratching at me with sharp, claw-like hands. My suit's armor protected me, but the monster then went for my helmet, breaking the two lights. I kicked it off me, its glowing radiance the only source of light in the dark corridor. I grabbed my pistol that was knocked away when it jumped on me and planted a few shots into its head before it could get up. Its head exploded, blue goo coating me in the walls. The blue stuff ate away at my vac suit's built-in armor, and I scraped it away before it could do too much damage. Panting, I put a few more shots into it just to be safe. Walking over to the body, I read the barely legible name on the jumpsuit. JMD. Interesting name. Must be some lowly reactor technician that was too dumb to realize he couldn't beat me. I chuckled, though a bit shaken. I reloaded my pistol and was about to go back to my ship when the pitch-dark hall started to glow blue and I heard footsteps on the floor. A lot of footsteps. I looked behind me down the hall that led to the reactor and saw at least a dozen of those blue monsters running at me. I brought up my rail rifle around and took down a few before they got too close for comfort, and I ran for it. Running for my life, I pulled the pin on one of my grenades and chucked it down the hall at the advancing horde. It blew up, the bang echoing down the hall. The ship's armor held the blast, and luckily I wasn't sucked into space. That wasn't the smartest move on my part. I turned around to see the blown up monsters melt away and flow through the vents on the ground. I realized with a start that nowhere was safe. Unfortunately, just a moment too late, as the blue goo wrapped around my legs and it began to eat away at my armor. I screamed and ran the rest of the way to the airlock my ship was docked to. The goo seemed to choose what it wanted to melt, or the Centurion would have been ash long time ago. I had better not let it get to my ship. I ran into the room and sealed the door. My suspicion was confirmed when the airlock door started melting away and the goo poured through the opening. I opened the second door and onto the bridge that connected my ship to the Centurion. Using my suit's small thrusters, I flew towards my ship and opened the door, then sealed it. I saw the goo creeping across the bridge that connected the two ships. It was ready to consume mine. I ran to my ship's bridge and pulled away from the Centurion, not even detaching the bridge. With a final groan of protest, it broke away and left the goo a mere feet away from my ship. I pulled far away from the Centurion and could finally breathe a sigh of relief. I had never seen anything like that in my entire life. I looked back at the ship through my display screen and saw that the blue mass at the back of the ship was... No, it was moving towards me. It was so long that it was almost at my ship. I backed up and got my weapon system back online. I unloaded into the mass, reaching for my ship, blowing large sections of it apart. I brought my ship around to the other side of the doomed Centurion, and I knew what I had to do. The goo reached around the ship, but it was futile. I unloaded everything into the Centurion's stern. It took 5 minutes, and I was almost out of ammo when the entire ship finally exploded. A very, very big explosion. I backed away as flecks of blue hit my ship, but it did nothing. All that was left from the explosion was a strange black sphere where the mighty warship once lay. I sat there for a long while, contemplating what I just went through. My focus turned to my new main goal. How was I gonna get out of here?